You know what? We are like down to the minute on this script.
I guess so.
I know, it is really quite amazing. And we are down, this is the final segment of the program today. And we are incredibly honored that, count them, 4 officials of the U.S. Department of Education have joined us this morning to share some thoughts relevant to our issues today about leadership and district capacity and what we can look forward to. The format for this is going to be what we've called a lightning round. So you all have been submitting questions. We've been getting questions online, and there will be a point, if anything lags, or if you guys start twitching wildly in your seats, we'll certainly take questions from the floor as well. So these folks know to be very brief in their responses, and I do a lot of moderating, and I have no problem cutting people off if. So
I have been with you.
That's right. Deb knows in particular, and that's so we can cover as much ground as possible and get as much substance covered as possible. You all met with the 16 leaders who are being honored today, yesterday, and I'd be interested in what you. On 2 scores. First of all, introduce yourselves when you speak first, because I'm not going to even take time to do that, and say what was an aha moment for you and what you wished you'd said that you didn't. And I know, Catherine, I guess you weren't there yesterday. Right. But Richard, start.
Wow, okay. I thought I was going to have a chance to think about what I was going to say first.
No.
My name is Richard Collada. I am the Director of Technology for the U.S. Department of Education. I think yesterday was just really reinforced for me how important it is to be hearing what you need in order to be successful. And it was a fantastic chance for that to happen. So thank you for giving us that chance, and please keep that going. That was not a one-shot deal. You have a line in to do that at any point, at any time. I think the one thing that I wish I had said was, I wish we could think about, no, I'm just gonna say it now, which is, we need your help sharing the awesome work that you're doing with districts around you that are not as awesome as you are. And I mean that because one of the things that strikes me is there's so much, I walked out thinking how much incredible creativity and great work you're doing, and unfortunately, some of the districts that need to see what that looks like most were not in the room yesterday. So you need to come up with a buddy district, mentor, I don't know how that works, we'll talk about that, but how do you reach out and bring districts along that aren't doing the great things you're doing?
Sorry, Catherine, we're going to skip over you. Melody?
Yes, I'm Melody Musgrove. I'm Director of the Office of Special Education Programs for the department. Most of my career was spent in local school districts. I've been with the department almost 5 years, but I started as a classroom teacher, became a school administrator, district administrator before I went to the State Department of Education. So, like I said, most of my career is in local districts. It was good to be reminded of the importance of breaking things, very complicated issues down in ways that people can understand. And the importance of communicating. Sometimes in the department it feels like we're in sort of an echo chamber, so I really appreciate the opportunity to engage with the folks who are doing the real work of educating children, and so that was really great to hear.
And what did you wish you would have said that you didn't?
I don't think I said how much I appreciate the work that you guys are doing. I know how hard this is, and you are doing amazing work, so thank you for that, and we look forward to hearing more about it.
Great. Deb?
So hi, everybody, and congratulations on your honor. I'm Deb Delay. I'm the Assistant Secretary in the Office of Elementary and Secondary Programs. We are in charge of every program outside of special ed that deals with kids from age 3 on up through high school and some university programs. We have 100 programs in our office, so we're a pretty busy place. I just loved being with folks yesterday, and I was reminded one more time of a passion of mine, which is about leadership. That leadership matters, and one thing I did say was yesterday, and I wanted to say it in your presence, is that I just love the Leaders to Learn From program because it doesn't recognize one singular title, but it actually promotes the idea that it takes leadership in a variety of areas coming together to enhance the lives of kids and their families, and I really want to applaud that. It's not like one individual representing everybody across the country. I wish I was able to say yesterday that I had a forum to bring back all of your great ideas, or to have you come and actually rewrite ESEA. You had incredible things, sorry, and You know, one of the teacher ambassador fellows who was with us yesterday was in tears when you left. She said, please don't tweet this because it's really not great English, but she said, wow, they work their butts off. I said, yeah, and her tears were, she said, I just really wish that all of their ideas could be incorporated into ESEA. So some of you had incredible ideas about accountability and assessments and what you're doing to get more kids to go to college, et cetera. So the energy in the room was contagious, and it just made me want to actually today leave and not come here and just go find a place to work with kids. So thanks for bringing that to the department.
So I'm going to start, Deb, with you, and we're going to work down. You have less than 2 years with this administration. And again, given the audience and the kinds of issues that have already been raised, what's your #1 priority, Deb?
I think my #1 priority is to get those states who are doing really innovative programs and initiatives around accountability to filter out to LEAs and to have a sort of a bubble up about accountability. This is what we need for our kids, and this is what we want.
We're going to come back to accountability, so don't worry, I'm not going to leave that. Melody.
I think to institutionalize our move toward focusing on results more than compliance in special education. You know, we changed the accountability system for the first time last year. We started using student outcomes in our state determination decisions. And I think to get that to a point, it's very tempting for people in the field of special education to pull back and to focus on compliance because it's much easier than working on student outcomes. So we've really got to get to a place where we bring the system into balance. You know, what matters is whether kids with disabilities are learning to read and do math and go on to better outcomes. So to really systematize and to institutionalize that move toward results.
Catherine.
Hi, I'm Catherine Lehman. I'm Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights at the Department of Education. I'm sorry I wasn't with you yesterday. My #1 priority for the rest of the next 22 months is justice. We need to make sure that we deliver equal educational opportunity for all of our kids in all of our schools. And I'm so excited about the kinds of things I read that you all are doing. I was in conversation with Dr. Carranza, who I see from San Francisco here on Monday, about some really exciting things that they're doing in San Francisco. I really look forward to the ways that we can continue to partner to make sure that all of our kids have the equal educational opportunity that is their birthright and that is their federal civil right.
And Richard.
So I'm very excited about the next 2 years. You put an expiration date on us right here. I'm going to work on this long after 2 years are over, just for the record. I'm not going away.
I think it's January 20.
Yeah. So I am really excited about what the potential that technology has to support transformation of learning across these areas that we just talked about here. How can it transform assessment? That's a great area. How do we use it to bring equity to places that don't, where there are significant gaps that have been persistent gaps that have sat there and looked at us in the face for too long? And I think there are some great ways that we can bring that to happen. Now, we have made some incredible gains in terms of infrastructure over the last couple years. Just this recently, if you've been following, if you haven't been under a rock for the last little while, you've seen the $2 billion are just starting to go out the door for in-school infrastructure. An additional $2 billion every year following are going to improve connectivity to schools. That is a technical infrastructure problem that we had to address. If we stop there, we have done very little. And what I hope to focus everybody on, everybody I can find, everybody who happens to be unlucky enough to catch me in an elevator, is saying, how are we now focusing on the human infrastructure? How are we focusing on the people that can now leverage these tools to do phenomenal things? Very quickly, just one quick show of hands. How many in the room have signed the Future Ready Pledge in your districts? Yeah, awesome. So you are now joining a group of just under 2,000 superintendents across the country who have signed this pledge, the Future Ready Pledge, which says we are going to use technology to do transformational things, not just to digitize traditional practice, not just to have a textbook on a device instead of in a piece of dead paper, right? It is to really transform learning, and that brings me hope. And that's not dependent on us at the department, it's dependent on a really fantastic group of leaders out in the field showing what this looks like.
So Richard, actually a question on Future Ready. How, and very specifically, how do you build that momentum really concretely? And not just, have it be more blah, blah, blah.
Absolutely, so there's a number of things that we are doing. The first is a number of of you actually in the room. I'm looking at Don and several others who came and joined us at the White House for a public signing, of the pledge in front of the president. So that is one thing, is just to say, this is a real deal. This is a big, important thing that's happening, and showing that across districts is important. And the example that I gave is, right now, if you were to say, list me the couple districts that are using technology in transformational ways, you might think of, Mooresville, you might think of a couple others. My goal is, I want you to think of the small district in upstate Ohio, or I want you to know all these incredible districts that you never have seen on the front page of the New York Times that are doing amazing things. So that's the first, is we need to shine the light on districts that are doing awesome things. And we have a whole series of activities. It's not just that one shot at the White House that we're doing. The second is, we heard loud and clear from superintendents that they need help thinking about how to develop the strategy for using technology effectively. And so we have a series of 12 regional summits that we're doing across the country. You are invited to join them if you have signed the pledge. And we're bringing in the top experts that we can find around things like professional development, around things like community engagement, around things like personalizing learning, like choosing digital content. Because if you're not going to be using old textbooks anymore, which I hope you're not, what are you using instead, and how do you make that choice? We're bringing in these experts, and then we're allowing the superintendents with their teams, they have to come with their teams, to sit there and pick their brains and walk out of there empowered to actually know how to make action happen in this space. And then our job is to go back behind and shine the spotlight on people who are doing great work. If we show what's happening, if we really highlight good examples, this is going to catch on like wildfire.
Catherine, there were several questions around how the guidance your office has put out, how you're ensuring that it gets enforced, and how states and districts can be proactive in kind of owning those issues.
Terrific. Well, let me start by saying thank you for knowing that we put out the guidance and for reading it and also using it. And so, one really good way to be proactive about it is to
Talk
use it.
about what the guidance generally has been on.
So we have put out guidance that ranges from single-sex classes in schools to charter schools' obligation to follow federal civil rights laws just like any other traditional public school, to school discipline disparities in schools, to sexual violence at the K-12 and higher ed level, the full panoply of kinds of issues that come up in civil rights, effective communication with students with disabilities and their families, English learner instruction. We've really tried to reach out on the full range of kinds of issues that come up in schools to be able to say what the law is, the ways that we enforce, what we can expect, what are sets of best practices that you might use so that you can obviate the enforcement action and know what the law is and satisfy it in your schools. We are also very, very happy to provide technical assistance, so school districts who have questions, colleges and universities who have questions, can call our office, ask, we've got this kind of issue coming up, how do we manage it? We're trying this, does that work? What do you think about it? We're really happy to be a partner. We don't like to be in the gotcha space. We really like to be in the space where we're helping you to deliver for your kids, and we're thrilled to do that. Where we find ourselves in the gotcha space, where we need to enforce, we are responding to complaints that come in, we're responding to the civil rights data collection that we collect every 2 years, where we take a look and we see disparities that make us think we ought to look underneath that data, where we have community concerns that come to us. We have really full employment in that area. We have about 10,000 complaints that are coming to us every year across the areas that we enforce. We have 600 staff in 12 offices around the country, so we tend to have about 4,000 complaints open at any given time. We try to resolve our investigations within 180 days. That's our goal. For the vast majority of them, we satisfy that goal. And we are doing our best to be able to collect information from school district, from educators, from families about what's happening in the concerns that we're investigating, and then to come up, where we find concerns, to come up with resolutions that work, that are implementable, that are satisfactory for the families and for the communities involved, to make sure that we can see full satisfaction of the civil rights laws.
I love that you all are fast talkers, because I'm going to follow up.
Okay.
There have been some concerns raised about, for instance, single-sex programs, whether it's boys of color or for young girls or young women. What would you tell district leaders they need to keep in mind when they think about those kinds of efforts that they'd like to launch?
Sure. So it is permissible to offer single-sex schooling, either single-sex schools or single-sex classes. The circumstances under which it is permissible include having an educational purpose, so identifying what problem you're trying to solve. Here's a an example of what would not work. Sometimes we hear from educators that they find that their boys of colors English test scores are pretty low, so they want to offer a single-sex STEM-focused school for boys. Those two are not related, so we would not approve that. If you're trying to solve a problem of low English scores, you need to have a single-sex English focus, if that's the goal. But so connect the goal to the problem, and then make sure that you offer co-educational or single-sex equal offerings to the other sex. So if you're trying to open a single-sex school for boys, make sure that you have a single-sex school for girls that has the same focus, or have a co-educational school that is equally available. Make sure that access to the single-sex offering is entirely voluntary for the families, so you can't place the kids in and then have the parents opt them out. The parents have to volunteer their kids in if they want their kids in the school or in the single-sex class. And if you're offering transportation to single-sex school, you need to make sure that you have equal offerings for transportation to the other sex school or to the co-educational offering as well. So as long as you satisfy those basic principles, you will have satisfied federal civil rights laws and also the constitutional command.
Melody, some of the same kinds of questions hold true in thinking about equity for special needs, for special ed populations, and particularly in the context of accountability. What would you say the guidance that you'd like to pass along to district leaders to ensure both the letter and the spirit of the law is being fulfilled?
Great. So first of all, it's really important to remember who the population of children are that are in special education. The vast majority of children who are eligible for special education do not have significant cognitive disabilities. Most children in special education have a learning disability, which by definition is not a cognitive disability. They have physical disabilities only, deafness, blindness, so forth, or other non-cognitive disabilities. Yes, we do have a very small population that has significant cognitive disabilities, but for everyone else, the expectation should be very high. All the research tells us that when kids with disabilities are properly supported and have access to the general curriculum, they will achieve. Yet we see so many lowered expectations. So that is really important, that they have access to the general curriculum, that they are able to learn the same standards that other children. They have to be supported in order to do that, but that's what we have special education teachers and related service providers for. So that importance of maintaining a high expectation is really a strong message.
So, and here comes a question. IDEA is seen as a very prescriptive law with a lot of compliance elements. What can you all do in OSEP to promote more creativity and risk-taking in the districts and with respect to special needs kids? Well,
I think the first thing was to move toward results-driven accountability. It's to really bring into focus the performance of children with disabilities in our schools, and to, again, this is about how we all spend our resources, right? There's only so much time, only so many dollars, only so many people. How are we going to use those resources to benefit children the most? Yes, compliance is important, but we really are, the law says that we should focus on those compliance requirements and how they impact the outcomes for children with disabilities, the educational results. So, we should be focusing our time on whether or not children are learning, how they're doing in school, rather than as much on the compliance requirements. Of course, if you get a complaint, of course, if something happens, then you have to deal with that. But, we are looking for systemic issues when it comes to monitoring now. We're moving to a differentiated monitoring and TA system rather than we'll visit every state every 4 or 5 years, regardless of what's happening in that state. Now we're going to be focusing much more on our resources being targeted toward those states that have really poor outcomes for children, or if there's a systemic compliance issue in that state, whether it's fiscal or otherwise, then we would conduct a monitoring visit. But I would say those situations would have to be pretty egregious.
So Deb, the administration has gone on record as making testing reduction a high priority, yet it's still advocating testing in these certain grades. And I certainly want to be respectful that this area of testing and accountability is the one issue that we hear the most about. What do you think the balance should be between and among all these different layers and levels of testing?
Yeah.
Classroom even, right?
Right, yeah. So it obviously is a really complex issue, and I think for me, and I know it's why I love working with these folks, because we have equity at the heart of every single thing that we do. And I could say that truly about my 3 colleagues to my left. So we're on this big mission about ensuring that every kid has a high quality learning environment and that they have access to high-quality teachers, and they have the support structures to be successful. And in many ways, you can't figure that out unless there's some kind of an assessment system in place. What I'm really hopeful right now, and so we have to balance out, so let me just take one step back. We have to balance out, it's very easy for the federal office to go out and say, well, we only require 17 assessments in the course of a kid's lifetime, K-12. It's easy to say that. As a practitioner, what I can say, and I'm going to hold true to being a practitioner, is the fact that we actually, although we don't require, let's say, formative assessments, we're stitched to those. And I want to admit to that, because if you're a great instructional practitioner, you want to know how your kids are doing throughout the course of the year. I think what the Secretary in relationship, and also in concert with other organizations has done, like Council of Great City Schools, CCSSO, is to encourage states and local districts to look at what assessments are being used, why are they being used, and how long are they taking? What's the purpose of them? Because a lot of times, and I know from visiting school districts, people will say, well, our kids do A through J, and I'll ask about what's the purpose of them. Well, I don't know, we just have done it for 20 years, or we've done it for 10, or we have a contract for 3 more years, and spent a lot of money on it. So I think we're in a place right now where we, I'm going to say we in the field, have to take control of this. If you think before NCLB, and I was in the field at the time, those of us in my age group before NCLB, we are all responsible for that happening to us. Because there was a big cry for accountability, and if you were like me, you sat back and said, well, this too shall pass, I know what my kids are doing in my school, I feel good, that kind of thing. And then what happened was it didn't pass, so NCLB was done to us. We are at a really critical juncture here, so that while we want to be accountable, we have to help to define what the narrative on accountability is. We are seeing, I mentioned early in my comments, we're seeing some great innovation across LEAs and across the state level. We've been working with 8 districts in San Francisco is one of them, in the core districts in California. They're looking at a system which also takes into consideration student engagement, absolutely critical, social and emotional learning, 21st century competencies, in relationship to academic achievement. So they're trying to find this balance, right? We're working with New Hampshire with 4 districts who are coming out on competency-based systems. And so they're actually looking at performance tasks across 4 different districts, one of which is the same at every grade level, and then the local district has an opportunity to choose what other performance tasks come out of that bank. We're working with another state who actually is thinking about chunking out their summative assessment into 3 or 4, I'm going to say formatives with air quotes, which I hate, but 3 or 4 sections throughout the course of the year, so it's not one full 8-hour, 9-hour at the end of the year. It's chunked out according to the standards that are taught. So that's why I'm suggesting that, folks in the room, folks out in the field have a lot of really great ideas. We have to figure out how do we give the green space for those to grow and support them.
So I think most people or many people who have issues with testing maybe in general, actually, when you really drill down, the issues are with, and you've already teed this up, the uses, not only the uses for the test, but the potential consequences of the test and the accountability. What is the department thinking about doing with respect to the narrative, if you will, I hate that word, that will be what you all will be saying over the next couple of years in the face of opting out and people who are just throwing their hands up and saying, too much testing, I don't want to hear anymore?
Yeah. So actually 2 things the department has held fast on, and so we do all the flex waivers in my office. I'm aware of every state every day, multiple times. But 2 things that have not been waived is the fact that every student has to take the same assessment every single year. That we have not waived that at all. The second piece that we're really consistent with is, and we've not waived it all because it's in federal law's participation rate, and it speaks to the opt-out. So we're actually working with a multitude of states right now. Some states have 1 high school and 1 district in the state who's opting out. Others have districts who are opting out. And the problem with that is that because it's federal law, there are actually ramifications for the opt-out. So we deal with the state. So if San Francisco or Meriden or San Jose doesn't comply with participation rate, it's the state's responsibility to connect with them. It's our responsibility then to say in Illinois, California, New York, you didn't meet the 95 participation rate. And we have regulations around that, everything that goes from, you know, say, sorry, don't ever do it again, here's a letter, fix it in the next year, to we can actually withhold Title I funding or any other title grants from states. So that runs the gamut. So we're trying to work really hard with districts and with states to figure out solutions to what their particular issue is on the opt-out, right?
Right, and so let me take one more pass at this.
Yeah.
The idea that student test scores are being used in teacher evaluations, student test scores are being used for other kinds of what have been characterized as more punitive uses. And the Secretary has backed off some of that. People have said we need more green space, we need more time.
Yeah.
I mean, what are you specifically thinking?
I think that's a really good point. I think this administration has really grown in that. So I came 3 years ago when the waivers had already been developed and a lot of the policies have been developed. And we've really wrestled mostly when we hear from folks in the field that, look, it's too much too soon. We're trying to do new standards. We're trying to have a new assessment. And then on top of that, we have teacher principal evaluation. Where I'm a little disheartened is that at individual states that they've taken such a robust, dig their heels in the sand about, you know, teacher evaluation absolutely has to incorporate this percentage of the growth in their teacher evaluation, when they may not have been able to run the data to figure out, should it be 50, should it be 10, should it be 14, right?
Right.
And I think we have to pledge to learn from the new assessments that are coming out and figure out, what is the data telling us? And I think we really have to, and this is sort of where I feel like we have to get to a next level of accountability, is to figure out, you know, what's the appropriate place for the assessments in that? And more importantly, what does that mean for the school versus individual teachers? So I think there's a lot of space for that. I think I'd push really hard at the local level to say, you have a great opportunity to figure out and craft that to speak and give it that voice, right? So I think those are really important pieces. We've backed way off on percentages. We actually don't require a percentage in teacher evaluation. It's misrepresentation across the country. You know, we require it to be included, student growth to be included, but student growth could be measured in a wide variety of ways. So, and the one thing I would also say that when I was a district superintendent or even an assistant superintendent, even a principal, I didn't really realize the strength of my voice until I got to the next position, right? So when I was a principal, I thought, yeah, I don't know what those people in Columbus, Ohio are thinking, but at my school, I'm going to do my thing. Same thing as a principal, assistant superintendent. And then I got to the state level as a commissioner, and I was like, wow, who are all these superintendents like banging on my door? I didn't know. And in fact, I've said to Arnie, I didn't even know as a state chief I could call you so much and kind of like bug you. I may go back and be a state chief to start calling you all the time. But I say that because I don't know that we exercise our voice enough at the state and even at the federal level. And I'd encourage everyone to do that. And not in this rabble-rousing kind of way, but in a way of, this is what works, we have data around this, and this is why you need to consider A. It's easy to always get problems landing on our desk. What's really fruitful is to have solutions pointed at us as well to say this is, and that's what some states have done and some districts have done.
So I'm going to put another question out for the three of you, but you all be ready to put your hands up. And I see the twitching. This is what I say. The twitching has begun. Just to follow a little more on this accountability theme, and knowing that the Ed Department has, through NCLB waivers and other mechanisms, you know, put a lot on the districts and states, or states and therefore the districts. So what are you all doing when you think about how to be out in front of that to be helpful to the districts and states in these things that are still in the law by virtue of waivers and what NCLB says? I'm not asking that very well, but you know, you're trying to find your balance too for your particular work in technology and civil rights and equity and in special ed. So just talk about how you're trying to partner with the states and districts to find that balance.
Sure. So I mean, I can start. There's a number of ways they're doing it, but one of the things that I think, especially related to this assessment question, is we need to do a much better job of making data useful, right? So we can talk about when and how we're doing assessments and what's required and what's not, but at the end of the day, Parents are largely in the dark about how their kids are doing until, the quarter ends and they're like, oh, you got a D, I didn't know that, dang, well, 4 months have passed when I could have been involved and helped and it's now too late. Students also largely feel the same way, right? They feel that they failed this course at the end, and that's often too late to find out. There are some amazing new approaches for assessing learning and for providing real-time feedback, and that's what we talk about, real-time feedback to students, parents, and teachers about how their students are performing. I was talking to a teacher once who said, yeah, this assessment, we take these assessments on the kids that I taught last year to get the results this year, and now they're in another class, so I can't even do anything about those results, right? That's not the type of information that's helpful. That only serves one purpose, and that's to make us feel bad. But if we can use technology to help people know where they're struggling, where kids need help, where they're excelling, when there's still time to make adjustments, that's when it gets really powerful. So one thing that we're doing, to answer the question, is we are making sure that they're working to make sure there are much, much better tools out there to help with this problem. We are going to be, in just about 2 weeks, releasing the first guidance ever from the Department of Ed for developers, people who build tools in the space. For so long, we've been just dealing with, I don't know how else to say it, just sucky tools that are put up to be purchased. And we, I was in a situation where we were watching a teacher try to use this assessment tool that was really, really clunky, and the person that was developing the tool said, well, we just need to do more PD. And I said, no, you don't need to do more PD, you need to build a better product. And we've been so passive. We've just been willing to accept junk tools that when you click back, it logs the teacher out. And so one of the things that we're really excited about, one of my roles, is to just push to build more helpful, better tools and make sure your voice as leaders are included. One final thought, and then I'll stop, which is I was talking to a superintendent the other day who said, we no longer have vendors. I said, what do you mean? How do you? He said, nope, we have commercial partners. We have commercial groups that we are willing to work with to partner on building tools and services for us, but we no longer have people that are just coming to sell us stuff, and that's the idea that we need to transition to.
Richard, is the guidance going to be on assessment tools or all kinds of
technology?
So
one of the first things we do is actually give a list of 10 opportunities where technology can transform learning. One of them is the obvious one, which is how do you help improve academic skills specifically, which is important, clearly. Another one is specifically around assessment.
Adaptive,
so adaptive is a piece of that. But there are some other pieces that largely get overlooked by the huge power of the tech industry, like things like tools specifically to deal with equity issues, tools that help students get into college. Getting into college in this country is a little bit like the Isla de Muerta on the Pirates of the Caribbean. Do you remember that? Like, you only know how to get there if you've already been there. That's sort of what it's like. And so technology can help make that planning process happen. So anyway, I won't go through all of them, but we list out a whole bunch of opportunities
be all part of the guidance.
Build better tools to help support schools.
That's great. Catherine.
Sure. So, one of the things that we've done is to put out the guidance itself, so to try to actually answer questions before they come to us and to make sure that we're clear. We also have tried to be more transparent about our work generally. A year and a half ago, when I started at the department, we had about 100 total resolution agreements up on our website in the life of the agency, which is about 50 years old. We now have more than 500. It's our default that we put up virtually every resolution agreement that we enter into, so that the families who are subject to the agreement can see it, but also so that other school districts, other states around the country can see this is how we resolved a like issue. So
what are most of them on?
Well, most of our complaints are about disability, so about half of the complaints that come to us are disability, and so about half the resolution agreements are also about disabilities. And then they range from Title IX athletics, sexual violence, racial harassment in schools, school discipline disparities. I mean, a full range of issues that can come to us. And we put up the way that we're resolving them so that people can see I have a like fact pattern, maybe this is the way I can address it, and I can get there ahead of when they're coming. And then we also have had really strong partnerships with school districts. Sometimes we have an ongoing school desegregation obligation with the district. District will call us and say, we're thinking about citing a new school. We want to talk about where we're going to cite it. Will that be consistent with the agreement so that we can work with them? We look for every way that we can to be a helpful partner to make sure that people understand what the civil rights laws are, and so that we can get those satisfied tomorrow for our kids, because our kids don't get fourth grade over again. They need their rights now.
Melody.
So the first thing that we did was make the data more easier to use. We let's see, 3 years ago, we started publishing for every state, every year, a data display that has all of the different data pieces that are really pertinent to student achievement. and identification of students with disabilities, disproportionality. All of that is in one spot on our website, and for each state there's one kind of a data profile. So that makes the data much easier to access and to use. We also reduce the burden associated with submitting data to us. We reduce the number of indicators in the state performance plan. We created a web-based submission system that is now really getting great reviews, and this is the first year that states have really used it. But in addition to that, as far as technical assistance, we funded a huge center that is just starting this year. It's the National Center on Systemic Improvement, and their sole purpose is to work with states to build the capacity to support change at the local level around their state systemic improvement plan, which states are required to select one student outcome that they're really going to focus on for the next, say, 5 years. So that center is to be, looking at how do we build the kinds of capacity, the kinds of support that locals are going to need to be able to impact this sort of change. We also have some other technical assistance centers like School-Wide Integrated Framework for Transformation out of the University of Kansas that's working directly with states, districts, and schools about, like I said, implementation science. How do we build those kinds of frameworks that are necessary to support change at the local level? I mean, that's really where we're investing a lot of our resources, is because we know that's where you are, is the unit of change, right? It's certainly not at the, certainly not at the federal level, and oftentimes not at the state level, but it's at the local level.
So Tracy or Jason, I got one here, which was my first eye catch, and then Terry. I will say, I can't help but say, that part of the problem I've seen over the years is, even with all this information out there, people don't take the time to access it or have an appetite to, in essence, the demand side of that equation is not as well developed as the supply side. And I think that's an interesting conundrum for us all in the information world. Yes, my dear. Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Alita Zuber. I am from New York. I am from Ossining School District, which is a very diverse school district. And I'm so excited to talk to you, Catherine.
Yay.
I was looking for you yesterday, and I couldn't find you.
I wasn't here.
At least your position. So I know that school districts in my state have sent complaints about the funding inequities in New York State. And my main question is, how do you hold New York State accountable for not their inability, but their disregard for the Campaign for Fiscal Equity's decision about identifying equitable funding, specifically school districts' funding, and this is the per pupil funding, are funded based on student need, community wealth, and also the poverty of students. So we already know that the foundation aid formula works because it was the outcome of the Campaign for Fiscal Equity's suit or court case against the state. It actually went up to the highest court as an appeal, and it still was determined that New York State is not providing an equitable system for funding.
Alita, we're gonna have, sorry. School finance and school funding formulas are interesting, New York in particular.
Great. So I have my pointy lawyer hat on to answer this. And so one part of the pointy lawyer hat is I can't hold New York State responsible for not satisfying the Campaign for Fiscal Equity court decision, because that was a state law decision, and we enforce federal laws. I can investigate the complaints that have come to us about school finance inequity in New York from school districts. That question that is in front of me is whether the system of financing schools in New York violates one of the civil rights laws that I enforce, which is discriminates on the basis of race or disability status or sex. The question that is framed for us is whether kids of color in the state are receiving less educational opportunity because of the dollar delivery structure in New York State. It's a slightly separate question from the question that was in the Campaign for Fiscal Equity litigation, but we're actively investigating it now. What we will have to be able to determine to be able to find a violation is that there's a logical link between the dollar distribution formula and the actual educational opportunity provided to students on the basis of race, in contrast to white students. It's under investigation now. There's not a lot more that I can say about it other than that we are actively investigating it. I think there was real courage from the districts who came to us to say, we don't think we can deliver equitably to our kids and we need help. And we are eager to be able to be helpful on that and looking forward to what result we may be able to reach.
Terry.
Hi, Terry Greer from Houston. could you guys do to help us with the FCC to encourage them to allow us to use the E-rate reimbursable dollars to help provide internet connectivity to our poor Title I children? I don't understand why we can use those dollars to buy equipment, but we can't enter into contracts with them with cable providers so that they can have free access to internet at home. It's killing us.
Okay, so just to be clear about the question, you're asking about home connectivity because E-rate absolutely helps get Title I students in school. But you're talking about home connectivity for students that don't have it.
I get 215,000 kids. 85% of them are on free and reduced lunch. They don't have internet connectivity at home.
Right, okay.
So I don't understand why, because if we, like Michael Fullen said, if we're really trying to extend school into the home by giving kids laptops to take home, it makes absolutely no sense to me why you can't take those dollars and the school district enter into a contractual arrangement with a cable provider over the life of that kid's education and use those dollars to provide home internet connectivity. It makes no sense.
So thank you for your passion on this issue. By the way, I agree about addressing home connectivity. And my questioning was not to push back on the concept, it's just to be clear, because E-rate does provide a disproportional support to Title I schools. Your question is, when they leave schools, learning doesn't stop. We know that, especially if they have a device with them. How do we help them at home? So there's the quick but very truthful answer, which is there is a law, and in the law it says that funding goes to schools, not for home. That's not a satisfying answer for you or for me. It is the reason why the FCC has limits on where they can put their funding, right? You know, there's lots of people that have reached out and said, hey, there's more FCC funding, we should address this issue, and they are important issues. There's some legal boundaries. I think raising this issue, being very clear about the fact that we need to deal with home connectivity is really, really, really important, and we need to keep working on that. I do want to just add one other thing, even though I can't provide a satisfying answer about, you know, how because we can't change the law on FCC. It's not good enough to say, oh, well, let's just be loud about it. There are some other things that I think can be done in the meantime. There are a number of districts, yours included, I believe, that are doing some things through a program called Connect to Compete, which is it's a negotiated reduced cost for home connectivity, which you should take advantage of it. Doesn't completely solve the problem, but man, you should at least be doing that. When I talk to school districts around the country, I'm amazed how many don't know about Connect to Compete. The other one is thinking about some creative ways to connect communities. So I was with I was in Georgia the other day, and there was a program that they'd created. You remember the safe place icons, the little yellow icons in buildings where you could go? I used to go when I was about to get beat up. I'd go into McDonald's and I'd be safe for a little bit. They created an icon similar to that, a little green icon, which was a homework place. And they're all throughout the town, and it's on any building. It's public buildings, restaurant, private buildings, where they know if a student sees that, they can take their laptop in and they get free access to Wi-Fi and a safe place to sit and do their homework. And so things like that to start addressing the issue while we're making a lot of noise about needing to address home connectivity are really good steps. And I got more examples if people
Okay, we're going to take 3 questions before we take answers, and it's true lightning rounds. Fast, 1, 2, 3. You had your hand up. You did, my dear. 1.
All right, Laz Lopez, Illinois. Just want to make a suggestion. I work in a high school district that our concern with our current park assessment isn't actually accountability, it really is logistics. And so anything you can do to influence park, to change the logistics, to go from 75% PBA to 50% PBA so that we can use it to replace semester finals would go a long way for us to be able to just have it work within the school schedule in the high schools.
Great. I actually am going to give the questions that have come in to the ed folks. So there were several park questions. Number 2 was here.
Dennis Creed in Philadelphia. With the equity that we know is a problem for children who have a learning disability, as well as for English language learners, how can we use technology so if I am reading at a 5th grade level, but I need to take a state assessment in the 8th grade, that the content would match my reading level so that I'm not being put in a situation where I cannot perform, but I may know the content?
Jason, where are you? Or Tracy? Don? Thank you. Thank you. Dennis.
Yeah, in Colorado, we're experiencing a pretty significant opt-out movement with the testing. And I mean, it's really significant. It's not embellished. And the reality is, for whatever reason, it's mostly upper socioeconomic school districts that are opting their children out. and I heard you say that Title I funding could be withheld. How does that play out when some of the districts, most of the districts opting out will not be affected by that kind of reaction, and other kids who need the money may be affected?
I'm going to go down the row for anything you want to respond to that's
So I'll just jump on, thanks for the park stuff, we'll bring it back. I'll just jump out to the opt-out. So there are a variety of methodologies. So for example, and we're working with Colorado every day. So if Colorado, if we looked at their circumstance, one of the things we would judge by what we would do is to look and say, what has Robert Hammond, the state chief, done to get people to do it? So let's say he sent out a letter and said, oh, just opt out. No, not a problem, we'll deal with it, no ramifications. We would deal with that differently than if Robert Hammond goes to every district and says, look, this is federal law, you've got to comply, right, and everything in between. So we may look at that situation and say, well, in Colorado, Alabama, whatever state it is, if the majority of districts that have opted out to decrease the participation rate have been higher socioeconomic, we may look at something other than Title I. So we have a range of regulations. So we work with the Office of General Counsel and obviously the Office of Civil Rights to be sure that whatever we select is a thoughtful way to follow federal law, but also not to harm those kids who may in fact not even be in the schools, for example, where the opt-out took place. So Colorado is one of the more active ones right now.
Melody and Catherine, that's kind of still in your wheelhouse.
Yeah. So as far as the the assessments, I think for me, and Rich will probably have a better answer than I will, it's about the accommodations. The most contentious of all the accommodations is read aloud. And so, I know that the states are in very different places around, and districts around allowing read aloud. I mean, I think that can really be a big support to students with disabilities who are not reading at grade level. I mean, we all know that it's the construct that you're testing, and so there's no need to punish a child in other subject areas when their decoding skills are particularly low. So if we're not testing decoding, then we should be able to use some of the other accommodations. But that's tricky because I mean, making sure that too many accommodations are worse than no accommodations at all, and helping students know which ones are the right ones, and then making sure that those accommodations are turned on for that particular assessment and that particular child can be particularly challenging.
Richard, why don't you pick up on that?
So I'll be very quick about it, but one of the things that I will say that just gives me a huge amount of hope is the transition to computer-based assessments. And I know that comes with a lot of burden, and I understand how difficult that is in schools that don't have enough technology, and bandwidth is an issue. But as we transition to having assessments that are delivered via computer, the ability to have accessibility built in through universal design from the beginning is really incredible. And I could tell many stories, which I won't, I promise I won't take the time to today, but I just want to give one quick example. There was an assessment that was given up in the New England area. This is the NEAC assessment, and so you have a bunch of states that are taking it, and they measured how many students took advantage of the accessibility features, being able to view the text larger, having things read to them. And what they found out is that a large percent, like a third of the students that took advantage of those accessibility features did not have an IEP. So that tells you a number of things. One is it says we probably missed some kids that should have an IEP, but the other is it says it doesn't matter whether you have an IEP. Maybe you just forgot your glasses that day, but if what you're testing is whether you understand this and you need to see the font a little bit bigger, then you should be able to do that. And so I really, really believe strongly that the transition to digital learning, digital assessment, as painful as that can be, opens up huge doors for making sure that we're assessing the right things and not just whether somebody can read the font that's on a printed page.
And I skipped over Catherine because I wanted equity to be kind of the
final word.
Final note.
Well, excellent. So I will not take a lot of time, but to say that we are in active conversation among all of us, and also just to your question, we have brought in disability rights groups together with the testing consortia to make sure that we're in active conversation about how best to serve all of our kids, and to make sure that we are learning from the pilots, we're learning from our this year experience to be in continuous improvement. I think we have done significantly better than we were broadcast to do. I think we've done significantly better over time, and there's still room for growth, and so it's important to stay in that conversation, and it's something that we very actively monitor across all of our offices.
Okay, we kind of hit our deadline. Thank you all very much for being here and taking the time out of your busy schedules.